Hello, everyone. This is Mekel Kasanova coming at you with another episode of Decked Up, a gaming and tech podcast. And today I want to talk about something that I have been pondering for quite a while, and is something that, on a recent podcast I did with James, aka The Brink from Games Revealed podcast, we ended up kind of lightly touching on this, but this is something that I have been wondering for quite some time. And it is like, how much longer will the Steam Deck be a viable option for those of us that want to play the games that are getting released constantly? And I understand that there are ways to tinker and work around to get the Steam Deck to play the newest and greatest games, but it's starting to, and it actually has been for a while, but it's really starting to become an issue getting these games to run properly on the deck. And I want to talk about that. I want to have an honest conversation. This isn't going to be a super long podcast because I don't think we need to do a whole lot of exposition or anything. And I also want to touch on the leaked rumors for the revised or the updated or upgraded Steam Deck that have been circulating. I want to talk about that. And outside of that, yeah, you're probably curious, like, oh, what happened to your hair? Grew my hair out, got extensions, and there you go. That's the answer. Anyways, so before we dive further into this podcast, if you enjoy the podcast, you enjoy the channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like the video, sub to the channel if you haven't already, ding notification bell, all the stuff that YouTube likes. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the podcasting platforms out there, make sure you leave a rating, share it around with people, and give some feedback. And if you want more, I have a lot of conversations that I have and thoughts that I'd like to put into a podcast format specifically for supporters. So if you want to become a channel member, or if you want to become a patron or a podcast supporter over on Spotify, those options are available, which gives you behind the scenes exclusive episodes and such like that. Every bit helps as a content creator. This is our bread and butter. So, for those of you who don't like ads or you don't like all the other stuff, well, support the content, you get to bypass that. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the main thing I want to touch on, which is the not liability, the longevity of the Steam Deck. And if this is something that will be lasting for some time. Like, is it still viable of an option if you want to play the latest AAA titles? We already know it does well at AA. It does incredibly well with previous generation games, and older AAA titles, like some from this year, some from last year to an extent. But you probably have been wondering this too. We're seeing a lot of games that are coming out that are just struggling on the Steam Deck, and we have different things we can do. We got the different protons and all the different ways we can tinker and make the Steam Deck work better with these games, and maybe not give us a flawless 60, maybe a golden 40, or at most sometimes a stable 30 frames per second. But it's getting to a point, at least in my opinion, where, I've been very open about this before in previous episodes, and I know I've upset a lot of you who listen to this podcast or watch it, or especially the Steam Deck community, because, I've been open and honest about that. It's kind of cultish in a way. I've been honest and open about the fact that I, as not only a tech head, but a content creator and a gamer, especially as a PC gamer, I get tired of tinkering. As someone who is a father, who doesn't have all the time in the day, being content creating is my full-time gig, podcasting, conference calls I'm on, stuff with my kids, I get to a point where I just want to play a game. And I know many of you would probably say, hey, if you feel that way, stop playing on PC, go and play on console. But the thing is, with the Steam Deck, as it is, it's not the first device to be made that's a portable PC, but it's the most streamlined mainstream device out there. It's the most easy to use in most cases, not entirely, but for a casual consumer, it's the most easiest thing to pick up and start using that's quasi console like. But the thing is, when you want to go outside of Steam, or if you want to try and play a lot of the newest games, that's when you have to do tinkering. I've done tutorials on the Steam Deck. I did a whole bunch of them, not just for Steam Deck, but for various things. But primarily in the context of this conversation, I've done a lot for Steam Deck, and I ultimately got tired of it, which is why I moved over to the ROG Ally. And I'm not an Ally fanboy or anything like that. I just like the fact that I don't have to go into Linux desktop and then, sideload stuff to get other launchers to work, right? And then deal with compatibility layers and all that. Literally because it is a Windows device, I can literally download whatever the launcher, Battle.net, if I want EA Origin, or if I want Ubi Connect, whatever. Anything outside of Steam, I can just download, install, and get going, And same thing with like emulation. For the most part, I will say emulation's better on the deck for most things, but for, PS3 and for a lot of 360 titles, it's just better on the Ally and Windows in general. So I've gotten to that point where, and which is why I was shifting towards the Ally. It's also why I'm shifting more than likely towards the Legion Go, because I'm excited for its bigger screen, and I've already talked about why I want that. That trackpad, all the stuff, the detachable Joy-Con like features, that appeals to me, right? But with the Steam Deck, I do come back to it. I sold mine. My wife still has hers, and I'll occasionally pick it up and use it. And the fact that it does have a better battery life than the Ally is a big factor. But when it comes to playing certain games on it, like when I want to play Callisto Protocol, I run into a lot of issues because, yes, the game is deck verified, but there are instances where I can play it, it'll start freezing up, and then my deck reboots. I know that game for a while wasn't greatly optimized at all by any stretch of the mean on PC, but it's a game I do enjoy playing, and I run into issues with that, even though that's deck verified. I've run into issues with Dead Space as well. That's another game that I thoroughly enjoy, but I also run into issues with it running on the deck. It's verified, and we've all know how much of a joke the Steam verification system is. It's an absolute joke. It should be a lot better than what it is, but for whatever reason, it's not that great. And you'll have games that are verified that run like absolute trash, and games that either are compatible, it's got the yellow icon, or it's not supported, and yet it runs well. It's sometimes there's absolutely no issues with it. And it just having to try and figure out what will and won't work. I know it's trial and error, this PC gaming as a whole, right? But it just gets tiring, all right? A game like Forza, right? The new Forza Motorsport that came out struggles, if ever, running on the deck. And it's just at a point where, for me, because I do, as part of my job, I do have to cover the latest games. I prefer to play on PC. I got a 3070 Ti, got 64 gigs of RAM on this desktop here, got another rig back behind me that's kitted out, 3080, and I got another set up in the living room that's also kitted out. So when I want to sit and play, I can. When I want to play portably, I just go to my Ally. I can dial back the settings, but still be able to play the game. Assassin's Creed Mirage, I love that game. Runs okay, at least for me, on the deck, but runs perfectly on the Ally. I've had no issues. Same thing with Starfield. I don't even really try to bother playing that on the deck anymore. I know they've been making improvements here and there, but I don't personally like playing that at all on deck. I just play that on my Ally or my Xbox whenever I do, because I have only one Series X. It's set up at this station here. So when I don't come here to play, I'll just play on my Ally in the living room with that. And that's just a thing. Like this, as great as the deck is, the limitations of it's I don't know how many people know this saying, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway because there's a saying you hear the MGTOW guys say, um, or the red pill guys say, you can't escape the wall, right? If you're a female, you hit the wall. It's inevitable. You can look great, and then you hit the wall, and then it just falls apart. And that happens for men's too. I think that's just aging in general, right? So the deck is effectively hitting the wall. It's been running head on into the wall. But I think when we look at the price point at $399, right? Or you can get it cheaper if you get it refurbished. You look at the price point, it's unbeatable for price point, performance, and what it offers and what you can do with it, which that's a great thing. Where with it being more expensive, you got the $500 one, then the $600 one. You're paying more for storage. And honestly, you're better off if you have some computer knowledge, just getting the cheapest one, the 64 gig one, slap a 2 terabyte drive in and be done with it. If you want a better screen, get the Deck HD if you feel like tinkering. For someone who wants to tinker, I feel like the Steam Deck is great. I think if you want to do casual gaming for some, or even some serious gaming, the deck is great. I think if you want to do couch co-op, it's supremely great for that. But if you've gotten to a point where you don't want to tinker, like I said, that's where I'm at. I don't want to tinker anymore. I just want to pick it up, play it, because my time window is very small. It's not for me. And it's okay. It's not for me. But it's becoming very evident that we're going to see more and more games that are just not optimized to run great on the deck. And we look at, here's a case in point. Alan Wake 2. Doesn't run great on deck. That's as much as I can say, right? Previews are going to be coming up this week. I'm reviewing the game. It doesn't run great on deck. Alan Wake 1, OG does. Remaster, but 2 is struggling. And then there was a conversation that Remedy had with the developers of Alan Wake 2. They were already talking about the performance issues that they're running into with the Xbox Series S. They're having a lot of issues with that. Like, it's to a point where the Series S is kind of handicapping what they want to do with the game. Because they can build it on PC and scale it. They can put it on PlayStation 5, no issue. Series X, no issue. It's a Series S, that's the handicap. And they're going to make it run on the Series S, but they are going to have to cut a lot of corners and do a lot of things. And so, bringing that up, I look at the deck in many ways the same way I do the Nintendo Switch. A great console, phenomenal device, but it's a little long in the tooth at this point. The Switch already, when it came out, was outdated. That chip was already old when it came out. The Switch is, what, 6 years, almost 7 years old now? And we're at a point where Nintendo, I don't know how many of you have followed the leaks, the new Nintendo Switch apparently can do 4K 60, and it's all got all this other stuff, potential ray tracing, all this other stuff. And it's because Nintendo knows that they need a more powerful device, because Nintendo, as great as they are, they need third-party support. That's the one thing that really kept the Nintendo Switch alive on top of their first-party support and second-party. They need third-party support. And we already see with the Switch, a lot of big games can't run on it well. Or if they do come to the Switch, they're gimped, or they are cloud variations, just because the Switch is just not powerful enough to run it. And so with the Steam Deck, which is going to lead into the other topic about the leaks for the newer model or revised model, the Steam Deck is in that same position. It's older tech. They're not using the newer architecture that we have with the Ally, the Legion Go or any of the other devices out there from like INEO and such. And we're seeing those limitations constantly. And with the leaks, we don't really know. I mean, it seems like it's just going to be a refresh. Possibly they might. I mean, I don't know. I think it might just be a slightly a redesign overall. It doesn't seem like they're. It doesn't seem like they're going to put a more powerful chipset in there, which I think they should, because honestly, if the deck had a little bit more power, think if the deck had the capabilities of the ROG Ally or the Legion Go, I would pay an extra $100, $150, $200 for an Ally that had that type of performance capability, because it could still undercut the competition, like bar none. And there are other things that Valve needs to do. Valve needs to put it in stores. I know you can buy a Steam Deck, refurbished from GameStop, but I think it needs to be able to be, you walk into Best Buy, you walk into the GameStop, you can get a brand new one right there. We don't have that capability yet, at least not in the US. And it doesn't seem like that's going to be something that's going to be happening either. But I do think that we're going to see where the deck is just not going to be a viable option with games that are coming out in the future. Maybe I give it another year and a half, 2 years before it just isn't capable of running the latest games at a acceptable performance. But by that point, we probably will be getting ready for whatever the next legitimate Steam Deck is, like Steam Deck 2, potentially. We do know that, and they've confirmed that the Steam Deck has been such a success that they're already working on the successor. So this, the leaks that have been coming out, I think that's more of a, mid-generation refresh as opposed to a successor. Because keep in mind, the Steam Deck is still only roughly a year and a half old at this point. But I do think it needs to have, like, we need more power on it. Or the opposing argument to, instead of having more power, is having developers better optimize their games, which that's a valid argument too, because a lot of these games coming out, especially on PC, are piss poor optimized. How about we have both? More power, better optimization. Marry those two together. I think that's a good solution. But I do think, again, we're running into a point where the deck is it's hitting the wall. So that's that. What do you guys think? Do you think the deck is hitting the wall? Do you think that it is still viable of a platform for, I don't know, maybe another couple years to maybe 4 or 5 years? I'm curious to know what you guys think, and again, I'm not trying to say, I feel like a lot of people misconstrue this, but I'm not anti Steam Deck. It's just not for me anymore. I loved it when I had it. I loved what I could do with it. But when better options became available and I got to experience something better, regardless of, the micro SD card issue or not, I don't like going back to something that doesn't perform anywhere near as good. And I hope that resonates or it makes sense to you guys. I just want something that works and works well. And the deck just isn't for me. But all that being said, let me know what you guys think about the deck, the longevity of it, Ally. What do you think about the Lenovo Legion Go? We will be getting that in very soon to be doing our coverage on that. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you're watching on YouTube, like, share, comment, subscribe. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the podcasting outlets that we're on, leave a rating, leave a comment, share it around, and let's get this conversation going. And if you want to support, we got channel memberships on YouTube, Patreon. We also have memberships on Spotify for exclusive access to episodes. We're going to do bonus episodes and such. So all that being said, hopefully you guys had a good one. I am coming off of my birthday weekend. I recently turned 35. I did a stream for I streamed Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 open beta, or basically you had to pre-order it to get access to the beta, but I played that. Shout out to Blizzard, well, Activision Blizzard for providing the code for that. And yeah, 35 now, that much closer to 40, and loving life. And the best, my health is at the best it's been. I'm feeling great. I think I look a lot better than what I looked before. Lost a ton of weight this year, and doing a whole makeover. So yeah, thank y'all who came through on the stream, and thank y'all for who have been constantly supporting all this time. So that said, catch you guys in the next one. Stay safe, have aloha, and I'll see you guys around. Peace.